the workbook lessons coming into your inbox every day, but also if you want to send that to someone as a stocking stuffer or something, and major price reductions and all of that on a bunch of the online courses are down to $49 and all of that. So see if there are things on like Law of Divine Compensation, Alignment of Body and Soul, the Aphrodite training, Invoking the Romantic Mysteries, Creating a Career That Matters. All of those things are down to $49. So go to Marianne.com if any of that seems of interest to you, and you can have those things sent as Christmas gifts to people. Also, the Sister Giant 2017 is absolutely, it's going to be an extraordinary weekend. Many people have expressed some real upset about the current political times in which we live. There does seem to be a politics of fear out there, and we need to create a politics of love. So if you are interested in an integrative approach to political issues, I've done 3 Sister Giants before. We just kind of do them when I want to. In 2015, Bernie Sanders was the keynote speaker. You can go to the sistergiant.com website. You can see the speakers that are planned, so forth. We have great people. We will be really getting down about political issues, but the day before we will be getting down about spiritual and psychological issues. So we're going to be talking about a real integrative approach to what has to happen in the world today. We will have people like the co-founder of Black Lives Matter. We will have a scholar on voter suppression and getting the money out of politics and environmental issues and what is happening in the world. We will have all the political stuff going on and spoken of from a very soulful place. But we will also have people like Robert Thurman talking about Buddhism and the people who are talking about all of the kind of issues that we discuss from a position of what does Judaism have to say about progressive values at this time? What does Christianity have to say? What does Hinduism have to say? What does Buddhism have to say? So it's going to be a real integrative approach. And this year we are doing it in Washington, D.C. So we've always done them in Los Angeles. This year it's going to be in Washington from February 2nd through 4th. I hope you will go to sistergiant.com, and I hope you'll come. I hope you'll be there. And if you're not there, I hope you'll be there on live stream, and definitely money is an issue. We've only charged what we take to hopefully this time break even, but even then scholarships are available, so that's not an issue that we keep you. I'm getting a little tired of some of the people that are talking about how mad they are, how infuriated they are, how cynical, and then I mention something like Sister Giant, and then they say, yeah, I'm so angry, I'm so cynical, because once again, it's really, there is no one solution, but when we hear about organizations or we hear about projects going on that are part of the solution, let's be available to them. Right? So you can, there's a table there, the cards about Sister Giant, take them. And more than anything, go to sistergiant.com. You can register, you can read about it, you can see the speakers. And also, I assume those of you who are on my email list have already received this week's mailing about it. And if you're not on the mailing list, please do get there. And also, I appreciate it if you will help me spread the word about Sister Giant. I personally promise you it's going to be an amazing weekend. Personally. Okay? All right. All right, now let's talk about anything you want to talk about. Who wants to start? Yes. Over there. I'm coming. Aren't there microphones? Okay. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful. Okay, hi.
Hey. My name is Stacy.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you,
Thank
too.
you.
You sound to me like you come from somewhere like I do.
Louisiana. Not far. I've been inclined to ask you about angels, and then I heard this lady sing, and I was like, that's a definite angel. But I was just wondering if you would comment about angels.
Well, as I said
I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, as I said tonight, the Course in Miracles says that angels are the thoughts of God. So sometimes when you just have a hunch about something, you have a psychic hit. You know, and sometimes it's a direct, you have a sense it was the Spirit of God talking to you. You know, the Course in Miracles refers to itself as a very practical course. There is no doctrine, there is no dogma. This is not just theory. The Course in Miracles says the belief in God of itself is meaningless. It is the experience that we want. And so angels talking to you means that the spirit of love and the voice for love actually was able to break through the meaningless, fear-based cacophony that dominates the world. The world we live in is dominated by a thought system based on fear. The voice for the ego, which is the voice of fear, speaks first and it speaks loudest. So in both Judaism and in Christianity, there is the concept of the small, still voice for God. In all of the great religious systems, there is a focus on prayer in the morning. When you wake up in the morning, you take dirt and, you take a shower. You want the dirt taken off your body because you don't want to take the dirt on your body out into the world. But if you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is you read the newspaper, you go to the internet, you download the fear and the stress of the world, then your body might be free of dirt, but your mind is carrying all the stress. Particularly today, it's not just your stress. It's the stress of everybody in Syria. It's the stress of what everybody's going through politically. So prayer and meditation in the morning puts you in a place where then you can hear the voice for God. Otherwise, the ain't it awfuls will just be impinging upon you all day, and it will be the only voice that you hear. But if you take, even the Course in Miracles says, 5 minutes spent with the Holy Spirit in the morning is enough to guarantee He will be in charge of your thought forms throughout the day. Does that make sense? Okay, who's next? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I have a question about forgiveness.
Okay.
Thank you. I have a question about forgiveness, in that I've heard people say forgive and forget.
Okay.
But then in relationship with people who you maybe have forgiven for whatever sin, where is the balance of you've wronged me in the past, and yet I forgive you, and I wish to be in relationship with you without hurting myself?
Okay. As I said earlier, the Holy Spirit doesn't destroy your brain cells. Forgiveness doesn't make you stupid. So on one hand, you do want to forget. Because on one hand, remember, and this was when we were talking about the birth of Christ. So Einstein said the 3 dimensions are an illusion, albeit a persistent one. So linear, from a Course in Miracles perspective, linear time itself is an illusion. The past doesn't exist except in your mind. And the future doesn't exist except in your mind. We all make mistakes. So people who were who they were, and you were who you were. People make mistakes. And people, because they were triggered from their childhood wounds, acted a certain way in the past. And you, because you were triggered by your childhood wounds, acted a certain way in the past. Forgiveness is a realization that that's not who we are. That's where you are when you get stuck and triggered. And that's where I am when I get stuck and triggered. But forgiveness means that who we are in any given moment, we aren't in the past. The ego mind would like to deprive us of the future. The ego mind creates linear time by skipping over the miracle of the present, and so that the future will be just like the past, and then we say, nothing ever changes. Forgiveness, first of all, you have to have forgiveness in order to be free, like in a relationship. Regardless whether people go forward or they don't go forward. If I don't forgive you, then I will go forward with this drama, if not with you, then with another person. So even if I feel that I need to leave, or even if the other person feels they need to leave, if we don't forgive each other, then we will still stay stuck in that drama and we'll enact it with someone else. So you don't have to worry that forgiveness will put you in a position that you will be hurt again. Also, once you have forgiven, the whole point of forgiveness is that you have grown. So a lot of the things that make people hurt each other in relationships, you would now know to speak up sooner. And also, when people forgive each other, if you say, you did a certain something and I forgive you for it, and I say, I did a certain something and I forgive you for it, that means next time out, you're going to try to not do that. And I'm going to try to not do that. And it also means if you do start doing it, I'm going to have the capacity to just say, don't do that. And if I start doing that, you might say you're going to try having a capacity to say, don't do that. Now, in relationships, there's no book outside us. You have to go from what's within. Sometimes it's too much work. And you just may as well learn it with another person. But sometimes people leave, even after having forgiven each other, when the whole point is now that we've forgiven each other, maybe we can get it right. But there's no one else who can answer that. Only you can answer that for yourself, and of course both people have to make that decision. So when you forgive someone, you don't forget. I mean, if someone is, let's say, a heroin addict or a practicing addict or a really messed up person, and you just see that this is some chemically induced or real mental problems or something, obviously it is reasonable to think, I forgive you, I love you, now give me back my keys. I forgive you, I love you, never enter this house again. Those moments do happen. But even then, the forgiveness is necessary. And also, once the forgiveness happens, there's a great opportunity to do things that sometimes people leave at that point too soon. Does that make sense? And you have to, the Course in Miracles says we are to make no decisions for ourselves. In all things, we are to ask the Spirit of God to direct us. But it's always about living in the present. And the Course in Miracles, I mentioned earlier, the Course says you are reborn in any moment that you go without the past. That at a certain point, you stop reminding people of who they were. We all know what it's like to be around someone whose energy, if not their words, say this: I know who you are. I mean, one man once said to me, remember, I knew you before you got God. Right? Oh, thanks. Right? I mean, he almost meant it some kind of crude, stupid compliment. It was stupid, right? You don't want to. This is why we are always attracted to people who don't know us yet, because they aren't referring to who we used to be, and it's a high. But that's the opportunity in a relationship. That's why when a woman said to me once, "When do you know when to release a man?" The answer is every morning. Because the issue is and this is why relationships get boring. Because we don't know how to let somebody be today who they were not tomorrow, who they were not yesterday. That is the greatest graciousness in a relationship. You might have been not your best yesterday, but you get to choose who you're going to be today. And I get to choose who I'm going to relate to in you. The you that you're capable of being today, or carrying this energy of, well, I know how you can be. Nobody wants to be around that. Does that make sense? So there's responsibility on both people's parts. Does that answer your question? Okay. Who's next? Okay, coming over there. You start talking. It's going to take me a while to walk over there, but if you start talking, I'll... Hi.
Hello. I've been feeling very called to take a stand for women's voices in our world.
Okay.
And there's a lot of discussion about the rise of the feminine right now in today's world, and I wanted to know what your take is on it.
Well, I've written a few books on this, actually.
Yes.
You might be interested in a book I wrote called A Woman's Worth.
That's my favorite.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's obviously a topic, and it's obviously a topic, unfortunately, with many dimensions, some of which are absolutely horrifying, such as the incredibly misogynistic projections onto Hillary Clinton. So on one hand, we can talk about how women's voices need to come up, and we need to celebrate women's voices and all of that, and that's absolutely true, and I think in many ways that's happening. But we also have to face the misogyny inside ourselves, in women as well as in men, and be really honest with ourselves about how punished a woman is often when she does use her voice. It's not enough to say celebrate women's voices. The issue is don't kill her once she uses her voice. So in other societies, women might have acid thrown in their face, and they might have their hands cut off or even stoned. I mean, horrible, horrible things. But just because we abolished slavery didn't mean that we abolished racism. And racism in some ways just burrowed more deeply. That's when you got the John Birch Society, Ku Klux Klan, etc. One generation's task was to get rid of the institution, the externalization of racism, which was slavery, but that kind of legacy only morphs until you get rid of the racism that it's at its cause. The same is true with women. We no longer burn women at the stake, but we have even now not yet eradicated from human consciousness the projection onto powerful women of guilt and suspicion. It used to be, she's a witch, she's a witch, she's a witch. Now it's, she's a bitch, she's a bitch, she's a bitch. All we did was change the consonant, right? And to see in this last election how many women bought into this. And that's not to say she's a perfect person or she hasn't made any mistakes, although I will say this, you tell me one damaging issue about her politically that wasn't at least, if not more, true of her opponent. So I think we need to go into a deeper place than just celebrating women's voices. That's like 1995 to me. We need to go to a real deeper place. What is going on in this society because we just saw it. We just experienced it. It wasn't just that people didn't vote for and the obvious political. There were political weaknesses there. I was originally a Bernie person before I pivoted over, so I'm not naive about her politics. But the personhood, the projection onto her personhood, that to this day, no proof. Whereas we see the proof to the man in the situation over and over again, and it's completely like people don't even want to look at it. So we need to go way past 1995 into 2016. Otherwise, the women who should be the voices that make such a difference, namely Western women, will not rise up. And that's really important. I think after this election, I think every woman has a little bit of, I don't know if I want to do this, about going out into the world and really express your voice. You know, it's kind of like, I always thought the Statue of Liberty is a perfect example. She's so beautiful, you dress her up, give me you're tired, you're hungry, you're poor. So I thought, when we did this big thing about the Statue of Liberty a few years ago, I thought this is so typical of how women are treated in America. Dress her up, make her beautiful, just don't listen to what she has to say. And the only women that we allow ourselves to listen to are newscasters because they're not reading their own lines. So we have a lot to look at. So we need to use our voices, but I think the whole sisterhood issue comes in so big there. Every woman who speaks her truth, none of this is going to work unless she can know that there are women as well as men to her right, to her left, in front of her and behind her to say, you go girl. And when they lie about you, I'm going to say that's not my experience of her at all. Yes, ma'am. This lady and that lady. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have a question about being willing to accept your part in God's plan for salvation.
Yes.
I had a great life, and I have been fighting Lyme disease now for 5 years, and I'm not recovering. I spend a lot of time in bed. I don't think well, don't function well, and I just have a hard time accepting that that's God's plan.
You have a hard time accepting what?
That taking my
God's
skills
plan.
and capabilities is really God's plan for salvation.
Okay.
And I'm trying to continue to fight, get better,
Okay.
Restore my health for my family, but it's not going well. And
Okay.
I'm just
What is your
confused
name?
and could use your help interpreting that. Mary.
Well, the greatest help from A Course in Miracles perspective would be to say a prayer for you. Would
That'd
you
be
like
great.
that?
Thank
What
you.
is your name?
Mary Reese.
Mary. Okay. If there are other people in this room who are dealing with physical ailments or whatever, or if there are people that you love who have physical ailments, absolutely use this prayer to pray for them as well. Okay? Dear God, we pray for Mary. We pray that you put the hand of God upon her, that all false thinking and all dysfunction of mind or body be removed from her, that the light of her true being now rise within her consciousness and with her body, that her body itself might hearken to divine correction and healing and restoration. May the Mary in alignment with this disease now dissolve away in the presence of Mary aligned with the eternal perfect truth about herself. May the Spirit of God now remove all symptoms and all disease. And for this, in advance, for this miracle, we give thanks. And so it is, we all say, amen. God bless you, honey. Yes, ma'am, you had your hand up?
This was sort of a continuation of your
I didn't hear you, ma'am. I'm sorry. Hold on. It's a big place, you know. Okay, I'm with you.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
It was sort of a continuation from the other question about, I have a son who's 20, and we were having a conversation the other day.
Would you put the mic closer to your mouth?
I was having a
'cause there are people
conversation.
yeah.
I was having a conversation the other day, and I'm very concerned with it because I have a son who's 20, and he has a girlfriend, and I'm trying to raise him to be a good man, and but I used to consider myself like a feminist, but as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten confused about how I want him to look at women and treat women, and there's a confusion because a lot of the young girls in high school that he's dealing with, like, they don't want men to open the doors for them. They want to do everything on their own. And so there's just this sort of like, how do you be a strong woman, but be a woman at the same time?
That's such an important conversation. So, you know, as I've said to many people, I'm a real convert to the Pat Allen material. You know, Pat Allen is a psychologist in Southern California, and I used to, a lot of people still go to her talks and hear her tapes, and there are a lot of people who do similar work to that. But I'm a convert to all that, so that's basically what this is about. There is a term in Jungian psychology called the father's daughter. And what happened about the time that I was being raised, was the fathers, thinking they were doing the right thing with the best of intention, treated girls like, I'm so proud, you can do anything any boy can do. You can do it. You go out there and you can do it. Which programmed us to think that if I achieve enough, I will be loved. Which is not true, because a man doesn't fall in love with a woman for what she does. He can respect her achievements. But a man falls in love with a woman for who she is, not just what she does. Conversely, women, mothers of that generation, made the opposite mistake with the boys. Just as it's important at puberty that the father continue to cherish the girl's feelings and cherish who she is, respect, yes, her achievements, but cherish who she is so that she remains within her being, mothers, instead of releasing the son, continue to coddle the feelings of the son. Are you with me? So whereas the father is supposed to be taking care of the feelings of the girls, but they stopped doing that and instead respected the achievement of the girls, the mothers made the same mistake on the opposite side. Instead of respecting the achievement of the boy and releasing him to be a man and to respect his achievements, continued to coddle his feelings. So it totally messed everybody up, because it made women into people who think if I achieve enough, I will be loved, and it turned men into these weaklings who think my feelings are all that matter. So Pat Allen says that a man's greatest psychic craving is that his thoughts be respected. And a woman's greatest psychic craving is that her feelings be cherished, right? So she says 2 masculine cancel each other out and 2 feminine cancel each other out. That's not gender. That doesn't mean 2 men cancel each other out, 2 women. It means psychically. So if the woman is taking the masculine role, a man can't be in his manhood around her. He feels emasculated, so he will go away. He will go away. He might not go away physically, but he will go away if she's in her masculine, right? Now, what these young girls don't know, if a man opens the door for me, do I look to you like someone incapable of opening the door for myself? Okay, but let me tell you what it does to me when he opens the door for me. Right? So it's, well, your nervous system. It's a woman's nervous system. So it's all these things that not letting men do things for you. Men, I always say, they carry our suitcases. We carry their issues. Right? They got it down what to do out here. We're the ones who have it down what to do up here and in here. Right? And that's the perfect balance. So this has produced is a generation of ambisexual people. And that's why, I tell you, I can't even believe it when in my counseling with couples, some of the most hot, young, amazing couples that I talk to are the ones who aren't getting any. Because this undercuts the libido, it undercuts the sexual stuff when everybody's meeting basically as men. So a lot of feminism, and my generation did this, so I understand this. We suppress the feminine in the name of feminism. Does that make sense? So I love this story. I'll just tell you one story that Pat Allen tells. I love this one. To me, this says it all. She says, so your generation was brought up, she says, that the man is supposed to ask the woman where she wants to go for dinner. Right? So the man says, he picks the girl up for dinner, and he says, where do you want to go? And she says, I don't know, where do you want to go? And he goes, I don't know, where do you want to go? And she goes, I don't know, where do you want to go? And that's what it is, right? Okay, hot, right? But Pat Allen says, if the man says, I made reservations at Spago, does that please you? So the woman thinks, most women think, what I want to know is that I'm like half that decision. You know, Pat Allen says a man says what he wants, a woman is to say what she doesn't want. But if the man already made reservations somewhere and he says, does that please you? I mean, because making the decision, especially in today's world, is not what she wants. She wants to feel that he's handled the material plane. Particularly because in today's world, women, we're out in the workplace. We don't need proof that we can handle the material plane. We do it all day, right? And in fact, one of the things Pat Allen says that's fascinating is when a woman goes to work during the day, she needs 30 minutes. It actually takes 30 minutes for a woman's brain to cross over from the masculine and the feminine. For instance, when I'm doing this work here with you tonight, I'm in the masculine. You're the feminine. I'm the giver, I'm the generator. You're the receiver. It wouldn't work if I wasn't here. Wouldn't work if you weren't here. But in my personal life with a man, trust me, when I'm the generator, not a worker. Doesn't work. Doesn't work. It's not what a man is looking for, and it's not what the woman in her true self is looking for either. Right? Like the man, I've told you the story about the man who said to me when I said, well, you know that somebody's coming from another country to attend my seminar. And he said, I can't imagine traveling to another country to hear you talk. But I traveled to another country to hear you be quiet, be with you when you're quiet. But that's what we want too. That's what women crave. We want to be in that. So I love the thing in Pat Allen about the 30 minutes that it takes. When you come home from work, yoga, meditation, a bubble bath. I used to say when I would be counseling couples, right? And I would say to the man, well, you know, when she comes home from work, you can't expect her to go right into making dinner, helping kids with the homework, doing stuff at the house, and then later she's going to be some goddess in bed at 10:30 or 11. It just doesn't work that way. Why don't you do this? Why don't you take the kids or whatever for 30 minutes and let her have 30 minutes when she comes home from work? I call it goddess time. Let her have just 30 minutes to just kind of get the work off of you. This is the problem with too many people working together, and all of that kind of stuff brings up other conversations. Why don't you just get the day off you? We've let the work life, we've let our work lives just eat up life, which is having a terrible toll on our body, it's having a toll on our society, it's having a toll on our relationships, because there's another aspect of self. Particularly for women, if you give that 30 minutes, right, and then the woman can take a shower and she can get other clothes and she just become her other self. So what I've experienced with couples that's been very humorous to me is the guys leave my house kind of grumbling, blah, 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 blah. And later the women report to me that the guys become, come on kids, let's go, let's give your mom her goddess time, come on, let's leave. Because he learned from experience it served him later in the evening. I love it. Okay, so this is what I would say to you. Teach your son how to be a real man. And to really honor women. And to treat women like the queens that they are. And if he's not around girls yet who get that, when prepare him to be a man who does get that. Because that's your job in his life, is to prepare him to be able to be with a woman. That's part of your job. And if those girls don't get it now, number one, some of them might get it later. And some girls are being raised a different way, and they will get it, particularly if they have different fathers. Does that make sense? Because if those girls are raised by kings, by men who treat them like the princess that they are, she will be looking for a king. And a prince won't do it. Make sense? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I've got a technical question about the reading of the Course in Miracles.
Yes, ma'am.
I've had the book for about 15 years, and every time I pick it up, it's just overwhelming. And I've subscribed to your workbook lessons, and they're wonderful. And it's so nice to get your soothing voice every morning.
Thank
and
you.
I do them. The technical question I have is, the other two books, how does that all fit together? There's
Okay, the workbook, the text, and the third volume.
Yes.
Okay, so the Course in Miracles has 3 books. It's the text, which is 600 and some odd pages. It's the intellectual basis of the Course. The second is the workbook, which is 365 days of lessons. The Course in Miracles says the crux of the Course is the workbook, because the workbook trains the mind to think along the lines that the text sets forth. And then the third volume is called Manual for Teachers, and it answers a lot of the questions that you have. Nowhere in the Course does it say which book to read first. When I first read the Course, now this doesn't mean it's right, it just means what worked for me. I read the text and the workbook simultaneously, which was helpful for me because the text was explaining to me in a way why I was doing the workbook exercises, and the workbook exercises were making the text real for me. If you just read the text, you get the intellectual information, but not the visceral mind training, like we talk about in mental yoga, where your thought forms are literally trained. The only thing the Course does say is that whichever book you're reading, you read it from the beginning. The people who just kind of pick up the Course and read some, that's not doing the Course, that's just reading. But the Course in Miracles says, actually, it says something towards the end, if you do the end before the beginning, the experience can become more traumatic than beatific. It's a very specific mental curriculum. The only book that actually has preparation to it is the workbook, where there is an introduction. There's a 1.5-page introduction to the workbook, where it actually tells you how to go about doing it. It says not to do more than 1 a day, and so forth. So I recorded the workbook, and that's what some people are receiving, wish to receive. One of the things I hope to do, and will be doing this year, is recording the text. But that's a big job, and it's a difficult job, but I hope I can complete it this year. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi. I really enjoyed that. But you spoke a little bit about the character assassination with the diagnosis and the pharmaceutical.
Yep.
I'm diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. I just wanted to hear a little bit more about what you would have to say about that.
You are not the category I'm speaking of. There is, I wrote a book called Tears to Triumph. And what I do feel very strongly about is that there is a normal spectrum of human despair. Someone you love died, you lost your job, you lost some money, you had a romantic breakup, a divorce. These things are very difficult, but they are not mental disorders. So when you take a situation like that and you label it anxiety disorder or depressive disorder, you're putting a victim mentality, you're labeling with a disease something that's not a disease. The kind of diagnosis you've received, and I feel, by the way, that is the purview, everything I just mentioned is the appropriate purview of the spiritual realm, right? But what happened was hundreds of years ago, people looked to religion for inspiration and comfort. Then the baton went to psychotherapy, and in the last few years, the baton has been passed again to psychopharmacology. Now, with the kind of thing that you just mentioned, sir, you are talking about a realm of mental possible, this is now outside my purview, outside my realm of expertise, such as, and I say that in my book, I'm not talking about bipolar, I'm not talking about schizophrenia, and so forth. So in terms of what I said and Jean Houston's comment, that would not apply to something like what you just described. And I should have said it. Does that make sense? So only you can know, but please know when you're talking about anything where you're using words like schizo or bipolar, schizoaffective or schizophrenia, I'm sure that Jean herself would not apply that those words. Does that make sense? Does that feel true to you? Thank you. You might want to read Kelly Brogan's book, Your Own Mind. Some of you saw me with Kelly at ABC not long ago, because she would take it all the way, but she's a psychiatrist. You're really talking outside. They're really talking about psychiatry and MD psychiatry beyond the level of my expertise. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm coming over there.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, sorry. So when I do the prayer and meditation in the morning, I'm a spiritual god. But at 2 o'clock, I mean, everything's wonderful and amazing, and I'm ready to go into the world.
Right.
At 2 o'clock, talk to me. Like, you know what I mean?
2 o'clock what?
Like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, talk to me. Like when I'm
Okay.
like, oh, I wish you
All right,
would.
so this is my question to you, seriously.
Yeah, no.
When you say that you do your prayer and meditation in the morning, may I ask what you do?
Well, I light a candle. I do
You
the
light
little,
a candle.
I do the
That's
little
so
ball
sweet.
of golden light.
Okay, and you do a little ball of golden light.
Yeah, yours.
Mine.
With all due respect to Marianne Williamson, this is not enough.
And then...
So that's what you call your serious prayer and meditation in the morning. You light a candle and you do a prayer. The prayer.
I do a little ball of golden light, and then I meditate for 20 minutes.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's what I was really going for. You actually do a serious meditation practice?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is my experience. If I've done what you just said, if I've done, say, transcendental meditation, if I've done the workbook of the Course in Miracles, I have a different nervous system throughout the day. I'm not saying I'm a perfect master. I'm not saying that I will not make mistakes. But if I've done my prayer, my meditation in the morning, the chance of my drastically blowing it are greatly diminished. The chances of my sending a text that I will regret for 6 months, sending an email that makes me cringe to think I sent it, saying something that I know was the last straw is greatly diminished. So if you feel that given what you're doing, you still are not, it's like anything else, take more medicine. Have you looked at the workbook of the Course in Miracles by any chance?
I've done it.
What do you mean you've done it? It's always funny to me, you've done it.
The workbook.
Well, do you ever get to go to the gym and say, I really like how I look now, I don't have to do this anymore?
Yes. All the time.
Doesn't work that way. No, doesn't work that way. After a certain age, whether it's your body or your thought forms, if you're not working at keeping them up, they're headed down. So if you're not using weights to counter gravity in your body, then your muscles are headed down. And this is what we have mentally. We have flabby mental muscles. We go into cynicism too easily. We go into complaining and victim and whining too easily because we're not doing the mental exercises that keep the thought forms up.
It's when the anxiety takes over.
When the what?
When the anxiety takes
Yes.
over in a moment.
Right.
And I don't have that pause.
Okay, so
and
this
I make
is the
mistake.
deal.
What do I do then?
Okay, first of all, you know, years ago, I was cooking, I made some chili, and it was too hot, it had cayenne pepper in it, and I called my mother, and I said, what do I do? And she said, get a raw potato, because if you get a raw potato, it'll suck out the cayenne pepper. And I never forgot that, because my exercise, my workbook exercise, in the workbook exercise, if you're doing the course, you never stop doing it. And that sentence of the day, that mantra-like sentence, into his presence will I enter now, becomes like it like helps you. It like sucks out the anxiety. Now, I'm not talking about being an enlightened master because I'm not one, but I am talking about being a version of myself that is not blowing it horribly. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But you have to, as you do the course, as you read the workbook, as you read the text and as you do the workbook, you get what in the course are called tools in your problem-solving repertoire. Sentences like, only what I am not giving can be lacking in any situation. You create what you defend against. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. There is no order to miracle. There's no order of difficulty in miracles. So if you wake up in the morning and you proactively fill your house with light, And if you don't proactively fill your house with light, your house will be filled with darkness, because where there is no light, there's darkness. What does that mean? If I don't proactively fill my house with love and my dedication to love, then neurotic thoughts, anxiety thoughts, depressed thoughts, pathological thoughts will be there. If I don't, because your mental energy cannot be diminished. It is of God. Your mind is very, very powerful. You cannot diminish the power of your mind. But if you do not proactively use it in service to love, it will be used in service to fear. If you do not use your mental capacity to bless the world, it will be used to attack you. So you can't just wait till the anxiety sets in. You know, you practice these ideas, you cultivate these thought forms so that when these situations do come, they are not as bad as they might be, or even if they are as bad as they might be, you ultimately find yourself in situations where healing can occur. Now also, let's remember this. The universe is intentional. The universe has the intention of raising all things to the level of highest self-actualization. And that means that in the situations where you are still unhealed, you are going to subconsciously attract those situations. That's what relationships are. The Course in Miracles says relationships are assignments, where you are brought into the presence of other people with whom there is a maximal learning opportunity, which means their wounded place meets your wounded place. And this, the way the Course in Miracles talks about it, is the same way in secular psychology, Harville Hendricks talks about it. Harville Hendricks talks about the old brain and the new brain. In the Course, it talks about the ego and the spirit. So what Harville Hendricks would say is, you are attracted to a mate who triggers the childhood wound, right? If you felt engulfed by the mother, you are attracted subconsciously to someone whose behavior would particularly make you feel engulfed. If you felt abandoned by the father, you were attracted to someone who would trigger in you the feelings of abandonment, right? That's how it works. What the ego will do, or the old brain, is use that experience to just trigger the childhood wound and make it such an awful place, I got to get out of here, right? What the spirit does is to know that it, through, as the Course in Miracles says, total communication is given and received, and through the kind of communication, depth, meaning, forgiveness, non-judgment, and people really owning their stuff and seeking to be better, that is how it is healed. Whether it's healed with that person or it's healed with the next person is almost irrelevant. But once you see that your whole life is one big spiritual lesson, that what's going on at work is really not about work, it's about your journey to God. What's going on in relationships is not really about relationships, it's about your journey to God. Then you have a completely different mental and spiritual and emotional construct for your experience. And when anxiety arises, I'm not saying the anxiety is not there, but you have a context for knowing where this anxiety is coming from, both in you as well as the other person. And you pray for a miracle, and you ask to see what you need to see. The greatest power of the Course in Miracles, the prayer we're taught to say, is, I am willing to see this differently. I am willing to see this differently. But what you don't do is just think it's all other people's fault. Does that make sense? Okay, over there. Those two over there. And then we're getting soon. Okay. I'm coming. This place is big. Okay, who are those two people right there? Where are we? Okay, all right, I'm coming. Okay.
I have searched up and down looking for a book that explains femininity, and I have
That explains what?
Femininity.
Femininity.
And I cannot find anything.
You are feminine. You are a woman. What book do you want to show you what this means? I'm not getting it.
I feel like we're not taught to be feminine.
That's what?
I feel like we're not taught to be feminine in our daily
Well,
lives?
this has to do with that Pat Allen stuff I was talking about. When Pat, I remember it was very different, the women under 35 and the women over 35. When I used to go to the Pat Allen lectures all the time in Los Angeles years ago, if you were under 35, women were very, this is ridiculous, it sounds like a game to me. And if you were over 35, the women were like, just tell me what to do, just tell me what to do, right? Because you're right, we weren't taught. Although in my life, and I think a lot of people's lives, my mother did try to tell me. And my mother got it right, but for some of the wrong reasons. And so we did have to come and rediscover some of these things for ourselves. It has to do with the stuff like I was saying before, that a man's greatest psychic craving is that his thoughts be respected, and a woman's greatest psychic craving is that her feelings be cherished. So for instance, Pat Allen says things like this: don't ask a man what he feels all the time. Ask him what he thinks. Because only a mother takes care of a man's feelings. And a man is hormonally programmed to lose his erection around his mother. So if you take care of a man's feelings too much, you are actually emasculating him. And that's why helping him and explaining things to him and all that stuff, they don't tend to appreciate, for good reason. Right? And that's also, though, why mothers need to give up the son and allow them to individuate to become men. And so at a certain point, even the mother is only supposed to be coddling the feelings of a son until puberty. After puberty, if a mother here has a son who is 18, for instance, and he's deciding where to go to college or something, from that perspective, the mother should not be saying, well, what do you feel? So much as she should be saying, what do you think you should do? So I think learning the feminine it's true. It's what I said before. We, in the name of feminism, suppressed our own feminine. And I think a lot of women are learning this, and we have the psychic scars to show it. And I see it in my own life. When I'm in my masculine, I'm trying to make it happen, or I'm trying to explain it, or anything like that, it doesn't work. Because you're not in your feminine. So some women would say, well, but if I don't, he'll be gone. Maybe if I don't carry that piece of the rope, he'll drop it. And what you need to do is just accept that. He's not there. But going to try to get him, not going to make him there. So you're going to cry either side. It's better to cry and have some dignity. Make some sense? Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm reading the Course in Miracles, and it's really awesome and amazing, the text. And I just wanted to ask you if you could explain a little bit who wrote it.
Okay.
And also how, you do you're able to do the voice of it and stuff, if you have a relationship with the people who wrote it, or a little history behind the book.
Yes, okay. In 1965, The Course in Miracles was written at Columbia University between 1965 and 1971. There was a woman named Helen Schuckman, and there was a woman named Bill Thetford. And they were both teachers, psychology teachers, in the psych department, clinical psych department at Columbia University. Now this is particularly fascinating to me because in 1965 at Columbia University, even though this was going on around the corner, at the law library, some of the greatest political upheaval of the 1960s were going on at the exact same place at the exact same time. Helen Schuckman began having some strange dreams. And she went into Bill Thetford, who was her colleague, and she said, I think I'm going crazy. I'm hearing a voice in my head. I don't know what to do. And he said, well, what is the voice saying? And she said, the voice is saying, please take notes. This is a course in miracles. She said, Bill, I don't know what to do. He said, well, I would take notes. And she would hear, she called the process inner dictation. She would hear a voice in her head, and she would write down through this kind of automatic writing type of thing. She would just hear the voice whenever she was available to it. She would write it down. She would then give the pages to him. He would then type it out. So it's a collaborative venture. And if you have the current edition of the course, this story is told at the beginning. And it's a collaborative venture. And there's something very powerful here about the agreement between two people. Miracles occur when two people agree on a goal. And that is when lives open up. The Course in Miracles says heaven is entered two by two. We are a society, the ego is the false belief that we are separate. And we've talked before about the disease of cancer being a metaphysical reflection of this mentality that instead of being here to collaborate with other cells to serve the healthy functioning of the whole, we all act like we're just here to get what I want and do for me. And that's malignant in the body, and it's malignant in consciousness as well. So the Course in Miracles talks about how when she said there had been all this political infighting at the psych department at Columbia, and he had said one day there must be a better way, and she said, I'll help you find it. Or I can't remember, maybe she said there must be a better way, and he said, I'll help you find it. I'm not sure. But the Course in Miracles says it was that started the process. When they started this, they actually thought it was just for their own personal relationship. She also said she was absolutely astounded after writing all those 600 and some odd pages of the text. She was absolutely astounded when she heard a voice say, Volume 2. So then there was Volume 2 and Volume 3, and they were afraid that if anyone at Columbia found out what they were doing, they were losing their tenure, like these psychology professors at Columbia channeling material. And then Helen just kept being told that whoever was supposed to take the material from them wasn't ready yet. And one day, Uri Geller, anybody remember Uri Geller? The Israeli who could bend, I met him recently, it was fascinating, who bends spoons. She went to hear him at Lincoln Center, and Helen Schuckman was there. And Helen went back and told Bill, I met the woman, I know who it is, I know who it is. And they had lunch with her, and she said, you hear voices, don't you? Helen, I want to tell a real quick story, those of you who might be interested. Anybody know who Muktananda was? Okay. Muktananda, Judy Scutch at that time and her then husband Bob were hosting Muktananda at their apartment on Beresford, at the Beresford Apartments. And they had all the hoi polloi of the people who were interested in these kinds of things. This was back in the 70s. All the hoi polloi of people who were into that kinds of things at their apartment at the Beresford. And they were all told to show up at 8 o'clock, and Muktananda would be there. They all came. They had this organization called the Foundation for Parasensory Research. He didn't show. All the people were there. She called his office and said, he's really got to come. All these people are here. They said, he'll be here, he'll be here, he'll be here. And then it was 9 o'clock, and he didn't show. And she called and said, he's really got to come, he's really got to come. They said, he'll be here. 10 o'clock. She said, you don't understand. People are here. He's got to come. He'll be here, he'll be here. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. He never came. The very next day, she met Helen. She went and told her husband, I found out today what I'm supposed to do with the rest of my life. He said, she was always telling me she just found out what she was supposed to do with the rest of her life. The next time she saw Muktananda, Muktananda said, how's that book? So Muktananda had known. Muktananda had known he wasn't supposed to show up. Muktananda apparently had known she was supposed to be available to do something else. Isn't that amazing? I always love that story. Anyway, so she and her husband Bob started doing publishing the course, and very few people knew about it. Helen Schuckman died. I met her husband. He said, I hear you like my wife's book. They have both died. Bill Thetford died in the 80s. Judy and Bob are still alive. Judy's just this magnificent woman. She lives in Northern California and is a great blessing on us all in ways more than anybody knows. So that's the deal. Are we cool? All right? Okay, let's have a final prayer. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we will be here, God willing, as my mother would say, next Tuesday night. Also, if a gentleman in Los Angeles last night, I was supposed to pray for your mom and for your friend Dan. I so apologize if you happen to be hearing this. I will do those prayers now. Okay? I hope all of you will look at sistergiant.com, and I'll see you when I see you. So I'll be here next Tuesday night. Let's pray. And I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. And I hope that you will remember wherever you are on Christmas that your only job to be in being that place is just spreading love to all of the people who are at the table. One woman was asking, I don't know where I'm going to be at Christmas. I don't know where I'm going to be at New Year's. And the issue is just to ask where you could be in such a way that the greatest joy could be shared by you with someone else. Okay? All right. Let's pray. Dear God, we take this moment to send our love to one another. We take this moment to send our love to all the countries, all the peoples, all the animals, all the sentient beings of this world. We pray for Amanda, for Sharon, for Sandy, for Trace, for Vaughn, for Brenda and Jamie, for Joey, and for Mary. We pray that all people here, as we now place our fears, our hopes, our dreams, our anxieties in the hands of God, dear God, may each of us have the miracle we need. And now, go forth in confidence and go forth in peace. For there are angels to your left and angels to your right. There are angels in front of you and angels behind you. There are angels above you and angels below. God himself has paved a path of light. It is before you. It takes you to your highest destiny. Seek only to walk within that light, within that space of love and forgiveness and atonement. At any given moment when you feel confused or fearful, ask an elder brother to take your hand as he would a little child, for truly he is there. In any moment you have a problem, pray for a miracle. And know that there are no orders of difficulty in miracles. In the space of total love, anything can happen. Carry this promise within your heart. Give all your problems to God. Seek only to be who he would have you be, that you might do as he would have you do. And from this point forward, nothing shall be as it was. Everything shall be made new. And so it is together. We all say, amen. God bless you, everybody. Thank you.